We've got reporters and analysts in place. They're covering all of these new and developing storylines for us. And we will begin with MS Now's Alex Tabbitt joining us from West Palm Beach. Alex, welcome. So how did administration officials present this operation to the American people? Because the president has said the United States is going to run Venezuela now.
That's absolutely right, Alex. The administration presented this as an America First operation. As the capture of Maduro, President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth argue will only benefit the U.S. when it comes to drug trafficking, when it comes to oil, when it comes to the safety of the American people. But of course, the bombshell announcement from this press conference is that the United States will be effectively running as a caretaker the country of Venezuela for the time being. I want you to hear what President Trump had to say with regard to that.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back.
Now, Alex, I want to give you a little bit of a picture of what it felt like in that room. I was at that press conference. When President Trump was not at the podium, he looked on the verge of falling asleep very often. It's been a long night for the 79-year-old president. He said that he watched this operation go down live. It began at around 10:46 p.m. Eastern. We know that at around 3:29 a.m. Eastern, that the American forces withdrew from Venezuela. And we know that President Trump took to Truth Social at around 4:20 a.m. to announce the capture of Maduro. So it's been a very, very long night for President Trump, but he is touting it as a huge win for his administration. Alex?
Well, it's been probably close to an all-nighter, and considering the circumstances, Alex, he can be excused for being a little weary this afternoon. Thank you for that. Let's bring in right now Ken Dilanian, MS Now Justice and Intelligence correspondent. So, Ken, this indictment against Maduro, it's now unsealed, and we also heard Secretary Marco Rubio speak about the ongoing legal actions against Maduro. So what did we learn, and is there the legal justification that members of Congress are looking for this action overnight?
That's an interesting and difficult question, Alex, because there obviously is a new superseding indictment against Maduro and his wife, accusing them of being narco traffickers, building on an indictment from 2020 in New York. And Secretary Marco Rubio clearly said that this operation was the military essentially protecting law enforcement as they went in to arrest these fugitives from justice. But Donald Trump didn't characterize it that way. He called it an attack. And as you heard previously, he said that the United States is going to run the country. So which is it? Take a listen to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man.
I think it remains to be seen how members of Congress will greet this. You're already seeing a lot of praise from Republicans. Look, this harkens back to what George H.W. Bush did when he removed and arrested Manuel Noriega, invaded Panama in 1989. And that was controversial at first, but it sort of was greeted with bipartisan support when it became successful and they installed a new government and Noriega went to prison. Again, we'll have to see how all this plays out. But we're really sort of hearing differing justifications between what the Secretary of State is saying and what the president is saying, Alex.
That's very true. I mean, look, we know the president sometimes uses his own language, his own vernacular, and it may not be specifically spot on. In this circumstance, do you then defer to, for example, what the Secretary of State was saying in terms of the reality of where we are legally?
I'm not sure, because it seems pretty clear that the president views this as an opportunity for regime change. And he's saying that the United States is going to run the country and is going to benefit from Venezuela oil production without a significant amount of troops there. It remains to be seen how that will work. But it's remarkable on a host of levels, including the fact that a lot of Donald Trump's base does not want foreign entanglements and foreign wars. He knows that very well, and yet he is firmly committed, it seems, to exploiting Venezuela's resources and essentially imposing the United States' will on another country here, Alex.
So let me ask you about Maduro and his wife, who you know are expected to arrive right here in New York this afternoon. So what are the next steps, and where is he likely to be held?
The indictment is in the Southern District of New York, so he could end up being held in a federal facility in New York City. Right now, he is on a ship, as we understand it, and it remains to be seen whether he's being interrogated. One possibility is they can interrogate him for intelligence purposes separate from the criminal case. None of that would be used in the criminal case, but no doubt the CIA has a lot of questions for Maduro that are unrelated to drug trafficking. But ultimately, he will be brought to New York, and he'll go through the same court procedures as everyone else, although likely he will be detained in a very secure way, not held with other inmates, Alex.
And I was just curious, would he and his wife be kept together? It may be a specific question that you don't know the answer to, but would they be separated or held together?
Well, if they follow normal procedures for federal detention, they would be separated, because men and women are not held together ever in prisons. But, you know, they could always make an exception for these guys.
Okay, Ken Delaney, and many thanks. And joining me right now, we have former CIA Director John Brennan. He is an MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. John, welcome to you. So lots to talk about the CIA today from what you heard in that news conference. How do you describe overall this operation?
Well, Alex, we're only 12 hours afterward, but it's clear that it was a tactical success. U.S. Special Forces, U.S. military, U.S. intelligence community are second to none in terms of their capabilities. And going in there and snatching Maduro and his wife, I think, is certainly consistent with my assessment of the continued professional capabilities of the CIA and the U.S. military. But that was a tactical success. And I think a lot of questions now are, what's the day after plan? And they were very vague during that press conference as far as what's going to happen. It says that we're going to run the country. And so Secretary Rubio said, make no mistake about it, this was a law enforcement operation. Well, that might have been the trigger for it, but it's far, far more reaching than that in terms of what's going to happen. The U.S. is going to run this country now. The U.S. is going to be in charge of this, and it's clear with the comments that were coming out from Donald Trump was that it's all about oil and wealth. If Venezuela did not have its oil wealth, I'm sure nothing like this would have happened. And if they just decided to go in and snatch Maduro and then say over to the Venezuelan people, okay, now get your house in order, that would be one thing. But this is about regime change. This is about a U.S. invasion that is now triggering this U.S. control over the country. And I'm sure it's going to be roundly condemned and criticized, not just by, the global community, but some of our closest allies and partners. This is unprecedented in so many respects. And yes, people will draw analogies to the situation in Panama, basically 35 years ago or so. But in that instance, there was a U.S. Marine that was killed before it happened. There was a large U.S. military presence in the country that was basically under risk. And also the Panamanian General Assembly had declared war on the United States. None of those triggers happened here. So it's very clear that Donald Trump sees this as an opportunity to seize the country, the wealth of Venezuela. And as he said, the American people, as well as the Venezuelan people, are going to benefit from this. But we're going to be talking about Venezuela for a long, long time to come. And I am just, puzzled as to how they're actually going to effectuate this regime change.
I always like to drill down and try to get details, logistics, John. So the question to you, these are big things. The president says that the United States will run the country. How does that even happen? What do they do? Do they have somebody who's a representative, an appointee, an ambassador that steps in? Does this also require CIA to stay embedded there in Venezuela? Because you know that there will be opposition to whatever happens from the United States, if not from the people themselves, if they feel liberated, certainly from supporters of the Maduro regime.
Yes, these are all excellent questions, Alex, and these are the ones that members of Congress should be pounding on their desks now, asking the Trump administration, what is going to happen? How is this actually going to take place? But for the U.S. to run this country, you would think that there's going to be U.S. boots on the ground. There are still a lot of elements of the Venezuelan system that support the Maduro sort of Chavista philosophy. The Interior Minister Cabello and the Defense Minister Patrino, they are very much the pillars of the institutions within Venezuela. And I don't believe that the Venezuelan people are going to just unanimously just embrace this U.S. takeover. There are a lot of differing views within Venezuela. Yes, a lot of people are going to be very glad that Maduro is gone. But the question is, what are they for? We know what they may be against, but what are they for? And this is going to be a real tough slog. We know that democracy or the democratic building process is very messy. Look at what's happening here in this country. And to try to do this in Venezuela now, when you have a system that really has been in place for several decades and just trying to turn it around, democracy and an open and free society is not like a light switch that you can just flip. And so, I think there are a lot of questions. And again, 12 hours into it, yes, we can all be happy that there were no U.S. military forces that were killed in the action, at least what is said so far. But there are a lot of questions and a lot of equities that I think are going to be at stake in the days, months, and even years to come.